To walk the path to enlightenment, one must choose the path first. Scott Layton here, and welcome back to Transcendence, Our Shared Journey. This is episode 3, The Grounded Path Forward. In episode 1, I introduced myself and defined what transcendence and ascension are. I'll refer to them both as enlightenment for most of our journey moving forward. In episode 2, we discussed the different faith and academic traditions of the journey. Today, we discuss the first fundamental truth of that journey, choice. The different truths we covered in episode 2 share more than they differ. Still, taken together, it can feel overwhelming and can be a little confusing for a simple guy like me from Pittsburgh, PA. So let's create a construct where we can begin that should make sense for most people. So let's start simply. I'm just one person with one story, and from where I sit in Corsia today, I need a version of that journey I can actually live. I'm a Roman Catholic and I believe in God and Jesus, so my path hopefully carries me in that direction when I'm finally called home. Your path may take you on a different journey, but I thought it was important to state that up front because I do believe in things like heaven or a final goal and things like sin or things that keep us stumbling in the darkness. So when I talk about things like that, we have a common reference point. I'm not sure if this is an infinite path or a place or state of being one can reach, either in this life or the next, but I do believe, first and foremost, that it is a choice to take the journey. Many of us just let life take us where we are without any clear plans or directions. Many of us have lived and live through such trials, tribulations, and trauma that the path seems too far out of reach. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Like I said, for me, I had to move to a different continent to help me through what I was going through, and I know that isn't a choice many of us have. If you've ever studied things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know that to reach higher levels of existence, you have to have all the basics covered first. Things like food, warmth, shelter, before you can get to higher things like self-actualization. All of those things are important to be sure, and many of us are at different places on that hierarchy. And for those that are struggling, I hope this can lighten your load some. I don't know, though, if I agree that one needs all of those things to reach transcendence and ascension. That would be quite a leap, in my view. Cannot a man who doesn't know if he'll have bread tonight or tomorrow not reach enlightenment? Didn't Job reach a level of enlightenment after his trials? And that brings me to something I've held on to for years. A story that proves transcendence isn't about comfort, it's about choice, even in suffering. One man who lived through the kind of suffering most of us can barely imagine was Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist from Vienna who survived the Holocaust. He was imprisoned in several Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz, and lost nearly everything: his wife, his parents, his career, even the manuscript of his life's work. Stripped of identity, warmth, safety, and almost all hope, he found himself packed into overstuffed wooden barracks, surrounded by death and disease, day after day. He later described how, on some mornings, he would wake before the guards came, barely sleeping anyway in the damp straw and the cold, and stare through the frostbitten cracks in the barrack walls. Sometimes he'd catch a glimpse of the gray sky or a dull sunrise through a slit in the wood, just enough to remind him the world still existed beyond the camp. He would reflect inwardly, quietly, while men coughed or groaned around him. And in those moments, he asked himself a question that changed everything. Even here, is there still meaning? While the Nazis had stolen his freedom, they hadn't stolen his ability to choose how to respond. That, he said, was the last of the human freedoms. He saw some prisoners give up, understandably, tragically, but others, even with no food, no warmth, no future, still found a way to live for something. A memory of a loved one, a belief in God, a scrap of inner dignity, what I call compassion as defiance. Some whispered prayers, some gave away their last piece of bread. Frankl later wrote Man's Search for Meaning, where he shared what helped him survive, that our deepest drive isn't pleasure or comfort, but purpose. He called it the will to meaning. He didn't glorify suffering, but he showed that even in suffering, we can choose to suffer with meaning, and in doing so, transcend it. So what does that mean for us, for you and me, today? not in a camp or a monastery, but just trying to live with integrity in a shifting world? I think any of us can follow Dr. Frankl's example that no matter where we are in this life, if we open ourselves up to the possibility, we can ascend and transcend. I think the world would be too grim to accept the alternative. One thing that keeps many from the path is spending too much of time filling personal voids in our lives with distraction, what psychologists call cues and triggers, actions and behaviors, and some perceived reward, what is also known as habits or habit loops, that we just live a life of action and reaction. Many have tried to chart their own paths, only to be swept up in storms not of our making. No one starts the journey on the same stepping stone, if there is one, but it does start with a first step. Let's take it together. And let's be honest, no one really knows what lies beyond. We walk by faith, by intuition, or by experience. So here's where I stand for now. I don't know if there's some universal consciousness like many Indian traditions teach, nor reincarnation, nor some of the other things some of the other traditions assume to be true, so I'll just go with what I know or assume. Not that I'm saying any of the known truths we've touched on aren't true, just that there isn't any way to really know. So let's stick to the dictum, I think, therefore I am, probably. There may be some collective, all-knowing thing I'm a part of and don't know or realize, but since I don't know, I'm not going to concern myself with it at this point. I also believe in things like free will and choice, so I'm not aligned with Calvinist or Islamic traditions that teach things like predestiny. After all, what's the point of trying to better yourself if God or the fates have already decided? I do believe God knows all, including choices we haven't made yet, but knowing and deciding for us are two different things. Anyway, none of that is important to our first steps, other than choice. How we live, what we live, even what truths we accept or which truths we deny, are choice, as is things like willful ignorance and bias and cognitive dissonance. I've discussed things like that in previous videos if you want more of a primer on them. But for our path choice, and more clearly, educated choice, is probably the most important thing to begin our journey. Or as Dr. Frankl wrote, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. So we end where we began, with a choice, not a grand mystical act, just the decision to begin. Transcendence begins the moment you choose to live deliberately, ethically, and awake, regardless of circumstance. Here's our ending question for this episode. Wherever you are in life, are you ready to choose to take the next step to enlightenment? Let us know where you are and your decision in the comments. In episode 4, we'll delve into day-to-day choices of what is keeping us stumbling on our path before and how to better guide us along the way. Until then, thank you for taking the journey with me. And remember always, you're not alone.